For most of my life, I believed love was something that had to be earned, like a prize reserved only for those who proved themselves worthy. I thought love was a transaction, a fragile currency measured by how much I could give, how deeply I could mold myself into someone else's expectations, how tirelessly I could prove that I was enough. I convinced myself that if I was loyal enough, patient enough, selfless enough, then, finally, someone would see me. They would choose me. And in their choosing, I would be validated. And so I chased. I chased affection, approval, and the fleeting moments of warmth that felt like hope. I read between the lines of their words, dissected every silence, and clung to the smallest gestures as if they were proof that I mattered. If they pulled away, I leaned in further. If they were distant, I convinced myself it was a test of endurance, a challenge I had to overcome. I believed that if I just tried harder, if I just loved more, they would love me back. Have you ever chased love, only to realize you were running from something within yourself? If yes, write "I did" in the comments and share your story. I'd love to hear your experience. But love, true love, doesn't work that way. With every step I took toward them, they seemed to take 2 steps back. The more I tried to hold on, the more it felt like grasping at sand slipping through my fingers. My happiness became a fragile, fleeting thing, entirely dependent on whether they noticed me, whether they responded, whether they gave me the affection I so desperately sought. The cycle was relentless, draining, and yet, I couldn't bring myself to stop. Until one day, something inside me simply broke. Not in anger, not in resentment, but in sheer, soul-deep exhaustion. I had spent so much time contorting myself into someone else's version of worthy that I no longer recognized the person staring back at me in the mirror. I had given and given until I had nothing left. And in that moment, something shifted. A quiet voice within me whispered, "What if love isn't something you chase? What if the love you're looking for has been inside you all along?" So for the first time, I stopped. I stopped running after people who made me feel like love was a finish line I had to cross. I stopped proving, stopped waiting, stopped shrinking myself to fit into spaces that were never meant for me. Instead, I turned inward. I asked myself the one question I had been too afraid to ask. What if I started looking for love within myself? And in that stillness, in that silence, I found something I had been searching for all along. Me. Carl Jung once said that the things we chase in others are often lost pieces of ourselves. At first, this idea didn't fully make sense to me. After all, wasn't love about chemistry, about connection, about fate? Wasn't attraction just an unexplainable pull, something that happened beyond our control? But the more I reflected, the more I realized. Our hearts are not drawn at random. There is always a reason. Jung's theory of projection suggests that much of what we admire, crave, or even resent in others is actually a reflection of our own unconscious mind. The people who captivate us, who shake us, who leave imprints on our souls, they are mirrors, showing us the parts of ourselves we have not yet claimed. What we chase in another is often what we have neglected within. Attraction, then, is not always about the other person. It's about what they represent. When I fell for someone who radiated confidence, I wasn't just drawn to them. I was drawn to the boldness I had buried beneath self-doubt. Their fearlessness awakened something in me, not because they possessed a rare quality I could never have, but because, deep down, I longed to embody that strength myself. When I sought their love, it wasn't merely their affection I craved. It was my own. I had spent so long searching for external validation, believing that love had to be earned, proven, and fought for, that I never realized the one person I truly needed love from was me. When I clung to their attention, dissected their words, and held on to every fleeting moment, it wasn't because they were the missing piece of my life. It was because I had not yet filled the spaces within myself. Their presence felt like oxygen, but only because I had convinced myself I could not breathe on my own. And when they pulled away, when they became distant, when they no longer reflected back the love I so desperately sought, I mistook their absence for a loss of my own worth. But it was never about them. Jung teaches us that the people we hold on to the tightest are not our saviors. They are our teachers. They do not complete us. They reveal us to ourselves. And the hardest lesson of all, it was never them I was chasing. It was me. It was the version of myself that I had abandoned. The love I had refused to give myself. The strength I had convinced myself I did not possess. the wholeness I had always carried but never fully claimed. The truth is, happiness was never about convincing someone to choose me. It was never about bending, proving, or molding myself into something more lovable, more desirable, more worthy. Happiness was about realizing that I was already whole. That love was not a prize to be won, but a birthright that had been within me all along. The moment I stopped looking outward for answers, the moment I turned inward with curiosity instead of criticism, I saw it clearly. Everything I had been seeking in another had been waiting for me within myself. And in that realization, I finally understood. Love was never something I had to chase. It was something I had to become. From the moment we take our first breath, before we even understand the meaning of words, we are shaped by forces we cannot see. We are molded by the quiet expectations of our families, by the traditions of our cultures, by the beliefs that have been passed down so seamlessly they feel like truth itself. These invisible forces seep into our minds, whispering unspoken rules about how we should live, who we should be, and most powerfully, what love is supposed to feel like. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, a vast, inherited reservoir of myths, patterns, and archetypes that shape the way we see the world, often without us realizing it. It is an unseen script written before we are even old enough to question it. And nowhere is this script more deeply ingrained than in our understanding of love. From childhood, we are fed stories of love that glorify suffering. We hear tales of heroes who endure trials for the ones they love, of grand sacrifices proving the depth of devotion, of relentless pursuit as the ultimate proof of affection. We learn to associate love with struggle, with waiting, with enduring. Movies tell us that persistence wins hearts, that the one who chases the hardest is the one who deserves love the most. That longing is poetic, that heartbreak is proof we have loved deeply, and that the pain of love is a sign of its intensity. We are taught that if love is easy, it isn't real enough, passionate enough, worth it enough. And so, without even realizing it, we internalize these beliefs. We begin to mistake longing for love, thinking that the ache of wanting someone is the same as the warmth of being loved. We confuse obsession with passion, mistaking the high of uncertainty for the depth of connection. We mistake emotional dependency for deep love, believing that needing someone is the same as choosing them. And worst of all, we hold on to relationships not because they bring us peace, but because they feel familiar. Because we have been conditioned to think that love should hurt, that love should make us anxious, that love should feel like a battlefield, a pursuit, a war to be won. But what if we've been taught wrong? What if love isn't something we have to chase, but something we have to realize? What if real love isn't measured by how much we suffer, but by how much we grow? The truth is, love is not a game of endurance. It is not a chase, a test, or a prize for those who prove themselves worthy. Real love does not ask us to abandon ourselves for the sake of keeping someone else. It does not demand that we shrink, suffer, or beg to be chosen. Love, in its truest form, does not make us feel small, it expands us. It does not drain us, it nourishes us. It does not fill a void, it shows us that we were whole all along. But in order to experience love in its purest form, we must first unlearn the version we were taught. We must break free from the belief that love is something we must suffer for. We must stop chasing, stop proving, stop believing that our worth is measured by whether or not someone chooses us. Because the moment we recognize that we have been following a script that does not serve us, we gain something far more powerful than love from another. We gain the ability to love ourselves. And when we love ourselves, not in a superficial way, but in a deep, unconditional, soul-rooted way, we stop running after love. We become love. And when we become love, we attract it effortlessly, freely, without chains, without fear, and without the endless need to chase. Because love was never meant to be a pursuit. It was always meant to be a state of being. Letting go is one of the hardest things we are ever asked to do. It feels unnatural, as if we are defying some instinctual need to hold on, to fight, to make things work. It is terrifying because it demands that we surrender the illusion of control, the belief that if we just try harder, love will stay, people won't leave, and we won't be left facing the unknown. The mind resists, clinging to questions that keep us stuck. What if no one else comes? What if this was my only chance at love? What if I end up alone? These fears grip us tightly, wrapping around our hearts like vines, whispering that to let go is to lose something irreplaceable. But in reality, the only thing we lose is the illusion. The illusion that love is something we must chase, that it exists only outside of us, that our worth is tied to someone else's willingness to choose us. For so long, I held on. I grasped for someone's attention, waiting for signs, hoping that one more effort, one more act of devotion, one more moment of patience would finally make them see my worth. But love, real love, doesn't work that way. When I finally let go, it felt like stepping into emptiness, like free falling into a space where all the noise had suddenly stopped. The absence I had feared, the absence of them, of the chase, of the constant push and pull, was deafening at first. But then something unexpected happened. Fear gave way to clarity. The emptiness was not emptiness at all. It was space. Space to breathe. Space to heal. Space to finally see myself beyond my need to be chosen. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the lifelong journey of becoming our most authentic selves. This path requires us to strip away the false beliefs we have inherited, the ones that convince us love exists somewhere out there, waiting to be found in another person's arms. But love is not a prize to be won. It is not something that another person grants us as proof of our worth. Love is something we uncover within ourselves. The more I focused on my own growth, the more my relationships changed. I no longer clung to people out of fear, no longer molded myself into what I thought would make me lovable. Instead, I attracted connections that reflected my wholeness, not my wounds. I no longer searched for someone to complete me. I had already completed myself. And in that realization, everything shifted. Love was never meant to be chased. It was meant to be embodied. It was meant to flow freely, to be felt, to be given and received with ease, not as a desperate plea, but as an expression of the fullness we carry within. Because love is not something we lose when we let go. It is something we finally find. There is a part of us that we rarely acknowledge, a hidden self that lingers in the corners of our mind, unspoken but ever present. It moves in the shadows of our consciousness, shaping our choices, our relationships, our deepest fears. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of us made up of everything we have been taught to reject, suppress, or deny. It is where our unspoken insecurities live. It is the voice that whispers, "You are not enough." It is the fear that tells us, "If you stop chasing love, you will never have it." It is the silent doubt that convinces us that without someone choosing us, we are incomplete. For the longest time, I refused to face my shadow. I told myself that my desire for love was pure, that my longing for someone to see me was simply a need for connection. I believed that my pursuit of love was driven by hope, by faith, by an open heart. But when I finally had the courage to turn inward, I saw the truth beneath the illusion. I wasn't chasing love. I was running from fear. The fear of not being enough. The fear of being forgotten. The fear that if I stopped proving myself, I would no longer be worthy. I had mistaken my desperation for devotion, my anxiety for affection, my need for validation for love itself. But love, true love, does not come from the outside. It cannot be hunted, captured, or secured through effort alone. Avoiding the shadow only gives it more power. The more I denied my fears, the more they controlled me. The more I refused to look at my wounds, the more they shaped my choices in ways I didn't even realize. But when I finally turned inward, when I dared to sit with my pain instead of running from it, I discovered something unexpected. My fears weren't truths. They were wounds waiting to be healed. They were echoes of old conditioning, stories I had been told and silently believed without question. The fear of being unloved, the fear of being unseen, the fear of being not enough. These were not realities, but ghosts of the past, haunting me only because I had never faced them. And when I did, everything changed. I didn't need to chase anyone. I didn't need to prove my worth. I didn't need to mold myself into what I thought someone else would love. What I needed was to embrace myself. What I needed was to sit with the discomfort of my own being, to hold space for the parts of me that felt unworthy, to offer love to the places within me that I had abandoned. And in doing so, I realized something profound. I had never been incomplete. I had never been waiting for love. Love had been waiting for me, not from someone else, not as something I had to earn, but as something that had been within me all along. Buried beneath fear, hidden beneath old wounds, waiting to be uncovered. And the moment I stopped searching for someone else to complete me, the moment I stood fully in my own wholeness, love found me. Not from the outside, but from within. The real question is, how much of your life have you spent chasing love, only to realize that what you were really searching for was yourself? Are you ready to stop running and finally come home to you?